Hello? Is it working? So thank you to all of you in our greater Abu Dhabi community and here at NYU Abu Dhabi as well for staying for this panel. The idea, as my colleague Matt Quayle mentioned, was really the vision of Philip Kennedy, Provost for Planning for the Institute, to celebrate and commemorate this incredible monumental work in its 200th anniversary, its bicentennial. And there really could be no greater privilege than to have you having performed for us. And I just want to express on behalf of our community and our music program our heartfelt gratitude, not only for your artistry tonight, but also for the gift you gave our students yesterday in the master class, which was exquisite. So just, again, a warm round of applause. Thank you. And just again to acknowledge the incredible work of Nahed Ahmed for bringing this program into being. Thank you so much. Thank you also to the Executive Director of the Art Center, Bill Bragan, the Executive Director of Outreach and Education, Mohamed Al-Bakri, and also the Senior Producer for tonight, Lindsay. We're deeply grateful for this opportunity to have everybody gathered here to think about this work. Also, I want to thank our colleagues, Ljubica Ilic, Dr. Ilic from the University of Novi Sad. She's here in our program this week. And also our heartfelt gratitude to you, Matt Quayle, head of our music program, for doing so much to facilitate tonight. I want to start with a question which really has to do with Beethoven's reception. I think many of us have heard Beethoven, the genius, the revolutionary, the Prometheus of the 19th century, this figure who has broken all the traditions, has defied the past, and sort of brought the fire of new revolutionary ideas to 19th century music and beyond. And yet, when one looks more closely, one also sees that Beethoven was deeply embedded in the classical traditions of the past. And I want to start with you, Yoel, and ask you the question of this Hammerklavier at this pivotal moment in his career. How do you hear it and how do you approach it as being part of his legacy, his classical legacy, but also yet being pivotal in terms of breaking new ground and transforming those traditions? And then maybe we can pass that question along the panel, because I think that makes him so interesting.
Before I say anything about anything, I just would like to thank all of you who came tonight here and to listen to this very, very difficult piece to listen to with such a concentration and such an enthusiasm, and I truly enjoyed playing for you, and thank you very much again. It's really, really, really probably the most difficult thing to speak about Hammerklavier Sonata, because it's just really beyond word. And it's such a unique piece. It's like nothing else in the repertoire of Beethoven or anything else. And it's just very differently placed among any other. And it's different from, it's number 29 of all Beethoven sonatas, and it's different from 28 or from 30, 31, 32. It's just very, very different. And I think he really just created his own world here, and it's just really so very distant from outer world, which I could totally feel into it. I feel really close to it, and it's just everything's just very personal, and yeah, that's what I can say.
So while you have the mic still, and of course we want to come back to you, can you just talk to us a little bit about how you prepare and how you've prepared as an artist to be able to play. I mean, you know, singers often start sopranos with Mozart and they build toward Verdi. And it's not like you start your career with the Hammerklavier. It's this monumental, incredible marathon feat. Like, it's huge. And how do you prepare artistically and in terms of stamina and conceptualizing? And it was incredible to see you and to listen.
I think, well, first of all, everything is just very abstract in this sonata, and nothing is so particular. I think it's just, you can imagine of 100 different things on your own, but in order to actually play it, you have to have an imagination, sort of, at least for yourself and for myself. And so I actually make different scenarios here and there, different stories, and yeah, put different imaginations here and there.
That's great. I actually want to come back to the question of instrumental music later and ask you the question, can instrumental music without texts, tell us a story? And if so, what is this story? But I want to first pass it down to our other panelists and ask you, maybe Matt, if you, as a composer, Matt is a composer and also theorist, if you would just comment on the ways in which this classical and romantic tradition is bridged in this work in so many important ways.
Yeah, sure. Well, it is a unique piece, without question. But if you step back from it, you see that there are many structures in the piece that are very similar to previous sonatas, and you know, this was a time when people wrote 32 pieces, all called sonata, and it's nice that we have a nickname for this one that distinguishes it. Many of the structures are the same, but what's so remarkable is how they are extended, drawn out. A second theme rather than being a single theme. It might last several minutes. He goes to new key areas that aren't standard. But what's most amazing to me about this piece are these moments that really can't be explained in sort of a rational or analytic way. This whole almost improvisatory opening to the last movement, and then out of nowhere he launches into this fast minor mode passage that could easily be the beginning of a great piece. And then he just changes his mind and stops and decides to do something else, and you have to wonder, what does that mean? It's hard to think of that purely abstractly. It must mean something. And it's hard not to imagine him composing the piece at that time. This is definitely one of those pieces, kind of like the Fifth Symphony, where you hear all the parts being pieced together. From the very opening, it's one statement and then another that expands on it, and then one that contrasts. So he's really showing you his whole construction. And I think it's really fascinating, and I thought your performance really brought that out. And also, what's revolutionary to me is the lack of politeness in the piece. I mean, that last movement absolutely growled in your performance. It was thrilling. It was really remarkable. So I'll leave it at there. I could probably talk for a long time about a work like that, but.
So yes, I agree. It's very much like Maynard Solomon said, his late works are really open to interpretation. So, as you said, you really have to have imagination and to be able to do something with them, because they are confusing at times. So, and at the same time, it is this dialogue with tradition that is very prominent. He's talking more to Mozart and Haydn in this piece, and he's having some kind of a dialogue and also incorporating this great tradition of fugue, so he's in a dialogue with even older tradition. So he's really trying to put together whatever he did in his previous output together with traditions that he inherited. So from that perspective, some things are also very obvious, and it's maybe even closer to his earlier sonatas. In a way, structured like very strictly. So it is a very unusual piece, as you said, from so many perspectives.
So just building on the question of musical form and the ways in which this piece both, in a sense, embraces and conforms to certain kinds of traditions and yet expands and challenges them, I want to just raise the question, starting again with you, Yoel, about this fugue at the end. And Matt brought it up as being kind of, it's searching at the beginning. It doesn't start, right, necessarily so definitively. But how is this fugue different, for example, than maybe the fugue in 110? And how does it work differently for you? And then I want to move to the question of what does it mean when composers use a fugue at the end? What are they trying to do? Because this is the architecture, the musical architecture that's really inherited from Bach. And I think it's referencing a tradition, and it can have a meaning, a very powerful meaning in the hands of different composers. So maybe starting with you.
Well, speaking of the lack of politeness, I think it's really a great definition of this fugue. Usually the fugue is an art of formality, I think, but this is just completely out of it. It's like each voice is eating each other, and there are every different motive, every page. One's trio, one's with staccato, one's with parallel third, one's with just every different motives, and it's just eating each other, and it just becomes, really unlimited. And I think it's just not the usual fugue at all. It's especially in comparison to the fugue of 110. Yeah, it's 110. It's still within the story, but this really goes beyond limitation.
Well, we were discussing this a little bit the other day. I mean, fugues for a long time, I think, were considered the ultimate challenge. You need to think horizontally, all these different lines relating to one another, and also vertically to understand harmony. So there is a certain sense in which Beethoven here is showing you, I can do everything possible, including turning the main melody, the subject, upside down, even at one point, for a short amount of time, backwards. So there's a bit of a show-off quality, in a sense, to this. But also on a deeper level, I think, this idea of the sublime, that which is too great to absorb or comprehend, something we might be in awe of, was gaining currency at this time. And I think this piece has that quality, especially to see one individual with two hands pull that off.
Yes, I agree very much. I think that it also has to do something with a moment in Beethoven's life. So the previous phase was very experimental in a very different way. So he is now trying, and he's having a crisis in his private life with his nephew and adoption and everything. So he felt like he needs to prove something to himself and to others. This is a feeling. Also, it's a very complicated form together, coupled with rondo, and so it's complex. It's not just a fugue. So I think that it's also important to see it from that perspective. He's trying to prove himself to himself and to the audience, because that was expected from him, just to continue this great tradition of being revolutionary. So he needed to keep that kind of reputation. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have more questions, but part of the vision of this Q&A and conversation after hearing the work is also to open it up to our audience and to give you an opportunity to ask questions to the artist and also anybody on the panel. So at this time, and maybe we'll come to the question of, what story is the Hammerklavier telling us, and get back to that with Yoel, or other questions about the sublime that might arise. But I'd like at this time to invite you as audience members to be able to come up. There are in the aisleways a mic at the end of each aisle. So for those of you who'd like to ask a question, please do come up, and we would love to hear your questions. And it could be even something for those of you who might be studying piano and see Yoel as a guide and a mentor, to ask something about her life. I mean, I want to ask that too, like how much do you practice, and what's it like being on tour? So these questions are also really, really important, because that is really our vision of bringing artists here, is to create a moment of accessibility. And I know when we go into that reception, I don't think all of you are going to get a chance to, each and every one, to ask a question. So we really want to encourage you to come up, especially our students. Are you coming up? All right. Wow, okay, so I'll ask some questions, maybe to reach out to some of the younger members of the audience. It was really wonderful to see in the foyer before the concert so many young people from the community here to be part of this concert, and you've really inspired our students here too, so thank you. So maybe just moving away from the sublime and the monumentality of the work to your life, and tell us a little bit about your journey to this place of programming Hammerklavier, and maybe also just to reference the question of the relevance of Beethoven's music today and among contemporary audiences, as maybe an endpoint of that journey of sharing your life with us.
It's not been too long that I started playing Hammerklavier. It's been only a year and a half. The beginning was just simple. I was asked from some presenter to play it, so I learned it. But that concert was canceled, and then the next concert, the following concert, I finally played it. And when I first played it, I thought it would be really great if I just play this piece for the rest of my life. only this piece, only Hammerklavier, because I loved it so much, and nothing was really this much of a satisfactory. I just loved playing it, and I mean the music was just everything. Like it was, one day it was a sorrow, one day it was a lamentation, one day it was a heroic success, or one day just every victory, just anything emotional, any emotion, or just anything you follow in your life, it's there. So I was really just happy to learn it. Then the next question was what to put with the Hammerklavier in concert, because today I played only Hammerklavier, but in the usual formats of concert you actually have to play something else with it. And I tried various options, I explored with different things, but nothing was really going perfectly well with Hammerklavier, because this piece is just very different from others. And speaking of a contemporary audience and contemporary scenes of music, I actually one of the options that I explored was to put it with different 20th century pieces. And I played various 20th century pieces. I played Arvo Pärt, I played Isan Yeun, I played Friedrich Gulda, and other things. And I actually realized nothing was this much modern compared to, and yeah, it was really just very, very, very fun experience, to put it this way. But yeah.
Thank you so much. It looks like we have a question, so please.
Yes, good evening. First of all, I want to thank you again for this amazing performance.
Thank you.
I really did enjoy it, and thank you. Thank you very, very much. My question was pretty much the same one as the previous one. I just wanted to know how long it takes to memorize such a difficult piece of music. Because imagine you end up playing it every morning before your breakfast or something like that. So how long does it take to be able to play with this kind of, concentration and an amazing way to do it?
The memorization of this piece is, well, yeah, I actually, when I first looked at the score, when I first learned it, I just couldn't believe that somebody can play by heart. It just looked impossible. I mean, especially the fugue, of course, and the third movement, because this third movement, the slow movement, is really long, and as Matt described, it's an extension of extension. I mean, the melody lines, the phrases, it's just going on and on and on, and it never stops. And I thought it's just impossible to play by heart. But memorization in general is not one way thing. It's a combination of a lot of different things, like by brain, I guess, of course, and by fingers, by the visual effects, by the ears, by everything, and then it becomes easier when you get to play it more and more.
Thank you so much. It looks like we have a question.
Hello. Hi. I was just wondering, how long have you been playing, and were there times that you felt like you wanted to stop because it was too difficult, and what made you keep going?
I started when I was 3.5. I'm now 32, which makes 29 years. It'll be soon 30 years of playing. I don't think there was any significant moment that I wanted to stop playing. The biggest reason was that I was afraid that I might not be good in any other thing. I seriously thought so. And I also loved music very much. I mean, piano playing was not my biggest passion or biggest interest in my whole life, but music was. And I just loved music very much, and that kept me going.
We have another question.
What was the most meaningful or impactful lesson that you've learned as a piano artist or as a pianist?
I couldn't hear it.
What was the most meaningful or impactful lesson that you've learned as a pianist?
Most meaningful. I don't know. I think it's about being able to express myself and actually being able to bring what those great people left and to share it with people. And I think that element is just very simple, but I think it's the most important.
We have another question.
My question is about the piece you performed today. So I understand that it has like different elements of both the Romantic and classical era, but it still isn't like a programmatic music. So how do you form the emotional connection you have when you play? Because clearly it was so passionate and powerful when I was listening to your performance. So when it doesn't have like a story behind it, how do you form the emotional connection, and does it change every time you perform, or yeah, how does that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, but it's really very hard to answer it very clearly, but I'm gonna try. Yeah, I think the story that I make in the piece, it has to be really something very personal, something that I'm on it right now. It's like it's like some stories, which I mean, stories can be good and great, but if that's not really something happens to me right now, then it just doesn't really connect to myself. And so actually the story becomes different every time. And yeah, I think the Hammerklavier particularly, I think it's some of the moments are very very personal to me for some reason. And yeah, that actually stays all the time, and I mean, fortunately. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have one more question, and I think I think this will be our last.
I just have a question again on the story of Hammerklavier. Sorry. You mentioned that it's a very personal story for you. And, sorry. I wanted to ask how we as listeners who aren't particularly trained, how do we pick up on the story? Is it an instinctual, like, emotive response within us? Or do we have to be trained in a particular way to pick up on the notes? How would you go about as teaching us to listen to the story?
Those are great questions.
Yeah,
the last two came full circle.
Yeah.
So.
It's a great question because I'm always curious about this particular question, and I have no answer. Yeah, really. But because music could be just good without any knowledge, I believe, but also at the same time, some things are just very much less meaningful when you have no knowledge or no information, let's say. And especially there are things which needs to follow up with the information, like fugue. I mean, fugue is a music with it's a music of knowledge, I think, and yeah. So, but I don't know. It's just, for example, the slow movement of Hammerklavier. Every passage, it's just something very particular to me. But would audience notice the story out of my playing? I don't think so. I don't believe so. But would that be necessary? I don't know. It's yes and no, I think. But it'll be, yeah. Let me share one of my experiences in my college time. I was in Seoul. I was listening to one of piano recitals. The pianist played pictures at an exhibition of Mussorgsky. And there was a big screen behind him. And he was showing these new works by some artists who painted for this concert. And of course, the basic idea came from the pictures, of the original pictures of Stasov. Not Stasov, what's the name of the artist? No, I mean the painter. I'm sorry, yeah, anyway, him. So he was showing these pictures, and he was playing pictures at an exhibition in front of the paintings. And I was thinking, it was really great concert, but I was thinking, it kind of limited my imaginations. I actually wanted to be free in my imaginations, and it was just everything great, but I think the classical music, especially instrumental music, the greatest thing of it is that it allows any imagination, and I think that's the that's the vitality of the classical music.
I think with that we've come full circle, and just we may not have understood your exact story, but we have been deeply moved by your concert tonight, and I just want, please join me in giving Yoel another round of applause. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So please join Yoel and all of you. I think the children, I hear them, building up a chorus at the door. So let's go out and celebrate our guest artists. Thank you, community. Thank you, Art Center. Thank you, NYU Institute.